Lucas Harper and D4vd, two names now forever tangled in a tragedy that shook a quiet town to its core, were never meant to cross paths in a way that would end in murder, mystery, and a web of secrets the world couldn't stop watching. Brooksville had always been a town where life moved slowly. Its streets were lined with maple trees, small cafes, and rows of neatly kept houses where neighbors waved at each other during morning walks. Crime was rare, and even the local police department dealt mostly with minor disputes or lost pets. The residents prided themselves on knowing everyone's name and trusting one another. That illusion of safety came crashing down one chilly morning in late October. A hiker seeking a quiet trail through the dense woods at the edge of town stumbled across a horrifying scene. Hidden among the fallen leaves and twisted branches were fragments of a body, carefully concealed but unmistakable. The discovery sent shockwaves through the community. News of the gruesome find traveled quickly, carried by panicked whispers and the incessant buzz of social media. Authorities identified the remains as Lucas Harper, a 17-year-old boy who had been reported missing just 3 days prior. Lucas had been quiet and introverted, known for his love of music and sketching rather than for trouble or rebellion. His disappearance had initially been thought to be a case of a teenager skipping town or staying with a friend, but this discovery made it painfully clear that something far more sinister had occurred. Parents began questioning the safety of their own children, and the streets that once felt comforting suddenly seemed ominous. Police cordoned off the wooded area, and forensic teams worked methodically, carefully cataloging evidence and photographing every detail. News crews arrived, broadcasting live updates that added to the tension and fear permeating the town. Residents gathered in small groups, sharing theories and anxieties, some recalling fleeting encounters or unusual behaviors that, in hindsight, felt chillingly relevant. The local school placed counselors on alert and organized assemblies to help students process the sudden tragedy. It was as if Brooksville had lost its innocence overnight. Every familiar place, the park where Lucas had played, the school hallway he had walked through, the corner store he often visited, was now shadowed by suspicion and fear. Investigators worked tirelessly, retracing Lucas's last steps and interviewing anyone who might have seen him. Each lead brought a mix of hope and frustration, but answers were slow to emerge. Amid the chaos, a growing sense of unease spread, the realization that someone capable of such brutality had lived unnoticed among them. Friends and family of Lucas grappled with grief and confusion, struggling to reconcile the boy they knew with the violent circumstances of his death. Community meetings were called, vigils held, and candles placed in public spaces as residents sought to reclaim a sense of normalcy and honor Lucas's memory. Every day brought new details, new rumors, and a mounting pressure on authorities to provide answers. As the investigation intensified, it became clear that this case would not only challenge the police, but also shake the foundations of Brooksville itself, forcing the town to confront dark truths that had remained hidden behind its picturesque facade. As the investigation into Lucas Harper's death unfolded, attention began to shift toward individuals who had been connected, even tangentially, to the case. Among the names circulating in whispers and online forums was D4vd, a local music producer who had gained notoriety through his online presence. Known for his experimental tracks and eccentric style, he had always lived on the fringe of Brooksville society, often working late into the night in his home studio. His followers admired him for his creativity, but the sudden scrutiny painted a different, darker picture. Authorities had noticed a pattern in his social media activity in the days surrounding Lucas's disappearance. Cryptic messages, obscure images, and references to past crime cases drew their attention, though none directly implicated him. Still, in a town hungry for answers, suspicion grew quickly. Investigators began documenting his movements, piecing together timestamps from security cameras, phone records, and witness accounts. One camera near a popular cafe caught him leaving his apartment late at night on the day Lucas was last seen. While the footage didn't show any interaction with Lucas, it was enough to place him under the microscope of law enforcement and media alike. The news of D4vd's potential connection spread like wildfire, amplified by online forums and local talk shows. Speculation was rampant. Some suggested that his fascination with crime might indicate something more sinister, while others defended him, insisting that his unusual habits were simply the byproduct of a creative mind. Amid the rising storm, D4vd took immediate legal action, hiring attorneys to manage the growing attention. Statements were carefully crafted to highlight the absence of direct evidence linking him to the crime, and every move he made was now filtered through the lens of legal strategy. Yet, despite these precautions, the court of public opinion was unforgiving. Followers who once admired his artistry now questioned his morality, and casual observers debated his possible motives with a mixture of fear and fascination. While D4vd maintained a composed exterior behind closed doors, the pressure was immense. Every knock at the door, every phone call from an unfamiliar number felt loaded with threat or consequence. Authorities continued to probe, interviewing acquaintances, reviewing digital footprints, and cross-referencing his movements with other potential leads. Each piece of information seemed to either deepen the suspicion or create more questions, blurring the line between speculation and evidence. Even as lawyers worked to protect him, the story took on a life of its own. Social media exploded with theories, and late-night internet sleuths dissected every post, every video, every possible connection. For Brooksville, the focus on D4vd created a mixture of fear and obsession. Conversations in coffee shops, grocery stores, and classrooms turned to his name, his habits, and his online persona. Yet beneath the public frenzy, law enforcement remained meticulous, knowing that the case was far from solved and that any premature conclusions could jeopardize the pursuit of real answers. In the midst of this scrutiny, one fact remained clear. D4vd was now an unavoidable part of a tragedy that had already shaken the entire town, and the investigation was only beginning to reveal how tangled the truth might be. As the investigation pressed on, the focus shifted from mere suspicion to uncovering hidden aspects of Lucas Harper's life. Police began reviewing his digital footprints, scouring social media messages, emails, and call logs in an effort to understand what might have led to his untimely death. It became apparent that Lucas had been communicating with someone he had met online, a person whose identity remained shrouded in mystery. These conversations hinted at secret meetings and explorations of areas of Brooksville that were rarely visited, particularly the woods where his body was eventually found. The tone of some messages alarmed authorities, suggesting that Lucas had been drawn into a situation that he didn't fully understand and perhaps even feared. Investigators started to retrace his steps during the days leading up to his disappearance. Friends reported seeing him unusually distracted, sometimes leaving the house late at night without explanation. Teachers noticed that he seemed preoccupied in class, staring at his phone or taking notes that didn't correspond to school work. Even as parents mentioned small changes, Lucas had stopped spending time with friends he normally hung out with and had become secretive about his daily routines. At the same time, law enforcement delved deeper into D4vd's history, looking for patterns that might explain his sudden emergence as a person of interest. While his fascination with crime and mysterious cases was well known, nothing directly linked him to Lucas. However, every social media post and late-night activity added layers to the story, prompting investigators to consider whether indirect connections might exist. As leads developed, the case began to reveal a network of overlooked details. Surveillance footage from local stores, traffic cameras, and nearby homes showed Lucas in the company of someone unfamiliar. That person appeared cautious and deliberate, often glancing over their shoulder as if to avoid being recognized. For the first time, police felt they were following a tangible trail rather than relying on conjecture alone. Complicating matters, forensic analysis uncovered traces of substances at Lucas's last known locations that suggested he had been under stress or duress. It became increasingly clear that his death was not a random act of violence, but the culmination of a series of decisions and interactions that had led him into dangerous territory. The townspeople, meanwhile, grappled with growing unease. Brooksville had always seemed insulated from serious crime, and the revelation that Lucas had been engaging with a mysterious figure online made many parents question the safety of their own children. Conversations that once revolved around daily life shifted to speculation about strangers, online predators, and hidden dangers lurking in familiar places. Amid these developments, law enforcement remained methodical, meticulously piecing together timelines and cross-referencing accounts. Every phone ping, every digital interaction, and every witness statement became part of a complex puzzle. The investigation revealed that what initially appeared to be a straightforward case of disappearance had far more layers, connecting multiple locations, individuals, and secrets that had remained hidden in plain sight. Each breakthrough, however small, brought both hope and tension as authorities worked to ensure that no detail was overlooked and that the truth behind Lucas Harper's tragic death could finally be uncovered. The investigation into Lucas Harper's death reached a critical stage as forensic teams made discoveries that shifted the entire direction of the case. DNA evidence collected from objects near the scene did not match anyone in Lucas's immediate circle, nor did it match any profiles in local criminal databases. This revelation stunned investigators, suggesting that the person responsible had been careful, leaving little trace behind, and perhaps had planned their actions meticulously. At the same time, the media frenzy surrounding D4vd intensified. News outlets dissected his every move, replaying surveillance footage and analyzing social media posts in minute detail. The public's curiosity reached a fever pitch, and opinions polarized sharply. Some viewers were convinced of his guilt, citing his mysterious online presence and odd behavior, while others emphasized that no concrete evidence linked him to the crime. Amid this chaos, D4vd's attorneys worked tirelessly to protect their client. They filed motions to prevent the dissemination of misleading information, carefully emphasizing that speculation and innuendo were not proof of criminal behavior. They highlighted the lack of any direct connection to Lucas and questioned the relevance of circumstantial observations. Despite their efforts, the pressure mounted. The investigation itself seemed to accelerate under the weight of public attention. Authorities expanded their search beyond Brooksville, reviewing patterns of similar crimes in nearby towns and connecting past reports of suspicious activity that had previously gone unnoticed. New leads emerged from phone records, witness statements, and unexpected sources. A local resident came forward claiming to have seen a figure carrying a large, covered object near the outskirts of the forest on the evening Lucas disappeared. The description matched no one in Lucas's immediate social circle, but it reignited scrutiny on D4vd due to his known nocturnal habits and proximity to the area. Investigators also uncovered unusual activity on Lucas's personal devices. Deleted messages and hidden folders hinted at interactions he had kept private, including a series of encounters with someone who had shown an unusual interest in his routines and the town's less traveled locations. Each revelation added layers of complexity, making it clear that this was no longer a simple case of abduction or misadventure. Brooksville itself became a focal point of national attention, with journalists, amateur investigators, and online communities dissecting every aspect of the story. Residents felt the strain, noticing heightened police presence, strangers asking questions, and the weight of constant media coverage. Town meetings became tense as officials tried to reassure the public while maintaining the integrity of the ongoing investigation. In the midst of this pressure, the law enforcement team remained focused on evidence over speculation. They methodically re-examined the forest, reviewing every angle, testing every hypothesis, and connecting seemingly unrelated clues. The discovery of forensic traces in unlikely places on tree bark, hidden under leaves, and near abandoned structures pointed to a calculated effort by the perpetrator to obscure their actions. The case that had once seemed straightforward now sprawled into multiple directions, combining digital mysteries, physical evidence, and an enigmatic figure whose identity remained unknown. Each new lead fueled tension, not only in the investigation but across the town and the nation watching from afar. The complexity of the case underscored the challenge investigators faced, unraveling a web of secrecy, deception, and hidden interactions while ensuring that every detail was examined and no stone was left unturned. The story was far from over, and with each passing day, the investigation seemed to reveal just how deep the shadow surrounding Lucas Harper's death truly ran. Weeks of painstaking investigation finally began to yield results, but the answers were far more complicated than anyone had anticipated. Surveillance footage from a convenience store on the outskirts of Brooksville revealed a previously overlooked detail. Lucas Harper had been seen leaving with an unfamiliar individual late in the evening, someone who had not appeared in any prior interviews or reports. The figure moved cautiously, keeping a low profile, and appeared deliberately aware of the cameras. Law enforcement quickly collected DNA samples and other forensic evidence from the scene. When tested, these samples confirmed the presence of this new individual at the location where Lucas's body had later been discovered. The revelation shifted the entire trajectory of the case. For months, suspicion had centered on D4vd due to his eccentric behavior, nocturnal habits, and online activity, but the introduction of this new person complicated the narrative. Investigators realized that assumptions and circumstantial evidence could easily mislead, emphasizing the necessity of precise and patient police work. D4vd, though never directly linked to the crime, remained a figure in public discussion, illustrating how perception can become entwined with speculation. Meanwhile, the discovery forced authorities to expand their search beyond Brooksville, tracing the movements of this unknown individual across neighboring towns and examining connections that had previously gone unnoticed. Interviews with friends, classmates, and even distant acquaintances revealed small but significant details. Lucas had been cautious in his interactions, often choosing secluded paths and secret meeting spots that suggested he was aware of potential danger. The forensic team also uncovered subtle clues in the forest, traces of materials that had been deliberately placed to obscure tracks. Evidence of multiple trips to the area and objects that had been moved or hidden in a manner indicating premeditation. Every piece of evidence reinforced the idea that this was not a random act of violence but the result of calculated decisions by someone intent on avoiding detection. For Lucas's family, the discovery was both shocking and painfully clarifying. They finally had evidence pointing to the presence of someone entirely outside their circle, someone who had exploited their son's trust and curiosity. While the resolution was far from complete, the findings offered a degree of closure. Lucas's death was not caused by someone from within the town, and the mystery of his final movements was beginning to take shape. Brooksville, however, continued to wrestle with the aftermath. The case had revealed hidden layers of risk in a community that had believed itself insulated from danger, leaving parents, neighbors, and local authorities more vigilant than ever. The story of Lucas Harper's tragic death underscored the fragile boundary between normalcy and peril, showing how quickly life can be altered by unseen forces. As investigators pursued the unknown individual, every discovery reinforced the importance of meticulous work, careful analysis, and the recognition that appearances can be deceiving. The case became a cautionary tale about trust, curiosity, and the unforeseen consequences of interactions that initially seem harmless. Even as the investigation moved forward, the town remained marked by the memory of Lucas, and the shadow of his story lingered over Brooksville, a reminder of the unpredictable and often hidden dangers that can emerge in the most ordinary of places.